G'day guys, I made a video a few years ago ranking my favorite and least favorite bosses in Don't Starve, and so much has changed since then that I probably need to update that list, but I thought that in the meantime it'd be fun to rank all the other creatures in DST as well, and boy are there a lot of them. I've counted over 300 different creatures just from Don't Starve Together, and I want to share with you my least favorite of those today. I tried to rank them based on how useful and important they are to overall gameplay, how frustrating they are to interact with, and honestly, it's largely vibes. I'm not including bosses in this list or boss adjacent creatures, but pretty much everything else is up for grabs. And coming in at number 10 is everyone's least favorite spider, the Spitter. These guys are not particularly difficult to kill with only 175 HP, but they have a really annoying projectile attack and absolutely no chill. Unlike other spiders, they cannot be stun locked at all and will continue to bite or spit at you despite your attacks. The only reason I didn't put them higher up in this list is because they're kind of cute as Weber's friends. Cute in like a ugly cute way, unlike the cave spiders. That's the kind of smile you see in your nightmares. Next up, this one feels a bit more personal. I've always kind of hated the wee McTusk. Yeah, he doesn't actually attack you and you can simply ignore him, but what does he do? What does he actually do that warrants him being there? I've always seen it as a father and son bonding thing, but he just kind of gets upset at you if you kill the hounds and then runs home. Not to mention he usually takes the hounds away from defending his dad, which is a pretty shit thing to do. I'm grateful that McTusk always drops a blow dart, because I like to keep that one especially for this guy. The next creature is also a little bit personal and is probably a holdover from when rebuilding Pearl's house was a bit more annoying than it is today, but I couldn't make a worse creatures list and not include cookie cutters somewhere on it. If you've ever sailed out to get salt on the ocean, you will have met these bastards. Their life's mission is to make yours difficult anytime your boat comes near salt formations. They do drop unique shells that you can use to make fishing lures and a very mediocre hat, but it always felt like more of a chore to come here than anything else. They're also ugly. I told you it was personal. And at this point, I want to make it clear that when I say that these creatures are my least favorite, I'm not saying that I hate them or I want them to be removed from the game or anything like that. In fact, I think it's kind of good that there are creatures in the game that are pests or unlikable. And for a lot of these, my main criticism is that they are just not very useful or important or really seen much at all outside of the one area that they annoy you in. And that is especially true for the next creature, the Naked Mole Bat. This dude only exists in the grotto biome, of which most people will visit a handful of times in a playthrough at most. They are very easy to avoid, and the only reason to really interact with them is to get their nostrils, which you can use to make the Milkmaid hat, which is basically a novelty item. I don't really mind the design of them at all. I like the big ol' sniffers they have, but they're kind of pointless, sadly. Next up we have Moonrock Pangolls. Just hear me out, alright? Standard Pangolls are annoying, sure. Probably not enough to warrant being put on a list like this, but they're not exactly nice creatures to interact with. They do, however, drop jet feathers and eggs, both of which are very nice. The Moonrock Pangolls, though, do not drop either. Instead, they will give you ice, sometimes monster meat, and probably some kind of disease. They're also so ugly that they have an insanity aura, which is fair enough when you consider that you can see their inside from the outside. I feel like the whole reason for their existence is to say, hey guys, look, the moon makes things bad. And I don't know if that's enough, really. The next creature does actually have a purpose, but unfortunately that purpose is to make your trip into the ruins more tedious and time-consuming. We're talking, of course, about the Lurking Nightmare, a relatively new addition to the host of nightmare creatures you can find in the ruins. Again, I think the design of this guy is pretty cool, but I also think the ruins was already challenging enough for most players without adding a new shadow creature that has more than twice the health of the others and a very sweaty attack pattern. And to be clear, this is not a post-rift creature. This guy is there on day 1 and can spawn from any Nightmare Light or Fissure during the Nightmare phase. Even for veteran players, fighting more than 1 or 2 of these nightmares at a time can quickly become overwhelming, especially post-rift when they deal planar damage on top, and often the best strategy is to simply wait until the calm phase of the cycle. And I think whenever the best option in a game is to sit and wait, that just kinda sucks. Hopefully we see a bit of a tweak to this system in the future. And speaking of post-rift nightmares, I don't think anything has jump scared me as much as the Ickers have since they were introduced. Once you activate the rifts in your world, you'll need to be constantly vigilant anytime you go down into the caves, because if not, you can and will be one-shot by these assholes. At this moment, there is no way of permanently preventing these from showing up once they've started, and they're probably solely responsible for a significant increase in beefalo domestication since their introduction in the game. The only thing stopping me from putting them higher in this list is the fact that you can make some pretty cool things with Icker, and if you hit hard enough you can get a decent amount of nightmare fuel. But honestly, I think the Ickers are nightmare fuel enough for me. At number 3, we're trading the caves for the waves, and while some of the creatures on this list are a little contentious, I think everyone can agree that the Rockjaw deserves pretty much all of the hate it gets. Fighting on a boat in general is uncomfortable at best, and that is where the Rockjaw really shines. From its frustrating targeting to its made up on the spot attack pattern with AoE, this guy was made to be a pain in the ass. I do think its death animation is pretty funny though, always cracks me up. It's like it had a sudden thought, then dies. For my runner-up spot, I kinda had to bend the rules a little. I'm not sure if this technically counts as a mob since it doesn't have health and you can't really kill it, but it can definitely get you killed, so I'm allowing it. It's my list anyway, damn it. Wavy Jones. This is probably the epitome of a creature I love to hate. The concept, the design, the pun on Davy Jones are all brilliant. Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean is honestly one of the best movie characters, by the way. But every single time this squiggly dickhead shows up, you just know it's going to be a bad night. Wavy can spawn whenever your sanity is under 75% on a boat at night, and for me personally, that is a lot of the time. This is the same kind of deal for the night hands that you see around a campfire or fireplace. They are relatively harmless, and the worst case scenario is you have to make a quick torch, but with Wavy, not only can it put out fires, but it can raise your anchor, release your mast, and even remove boat patches, all of which can leave you sleeping with the fishes if you're not on top of things. And that's without mentioning the amount of times Wavy manages to spawn in places that you just cannot get to because of the cramped spacing on a boat. But as annoying as Wavy is, I think the next creature has it beat easily. At this point in time, the Wrathful Rabbit King has got to be my least favorite creature in DST, and probably by a long way. I don't know why the devs seem so opposed to players killing bunnymen for food and resources, but there seems to have been a campaign over the last few years to make farming bunnymen as unviable as possible. First we had the massive nerf to their loot table, which went from 2 carrots and a meat or bunny puff to 1 of the 3, and now we have the Rabbit King who acts like a bunny policeman that shows up if you kill too many of them. And yes, that includes rabbits too. Killing as few as 7 bunnymen can trigger this guy spawning. He has 2000 health, deals 75 damage, and will follow you to the end of the earth with his rabbit enforcers. If you defeat the 3 of them, he will simply spawn new ones with no limit whatsoever. The cudgel that you get from killing the king is okay-ish and allows you to deal more damage to bunnies. Like you'd want to risk summoning this bastard again. The Wrathful Rabbit King is so annoying to deal with that I simply do not bother killing bunnymen anymore because it's not worth the risk. and I think it's a real shame. It's an interesting mechanic to explore. But why bunnymen? We already have Krampus, who spawns if you generate a certain amount of naughtiness, and doesn't even attack you unless you hit first. Mind you, Krampus drops one of the best, if not the best items in the game with the Krampus sack. The King is much more difficult to deal with, has 7 times as much health, not including his guards, and drops nothing really of value. I just don't get it. But that brings me to the end of the list of my least favorite creatures in Don't Starve Together. Did I get it right? Let me know in the comments, and feel free to share your top 5 or top 10 as well. There were definitely a few that only just missed out on my list, so I'm curious to see if you guys include them. As always, thank you very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see my top 10 best creatures, which should be coming soon. But until then, take care.